Good afternoon, friends. Welcome to Orange Friday and a daily reflection. As many of you know, one of my other passions is baseball. And I follow the Mets, the Giants, and the A's. And even in this strange year of a baseball season, I'm still checking in on those teams on their Facebook page, catching highlights, and when I can, an entire game. On Wednesday night, the Giants and the A's postponed their baseball games. Last night, the Mets took the field, and after 42 seconds of silence to honor Jackie Robinson, who wore the number 42, and Jackie Robinson was the first African American to play in the Major League Baseball game, they too, the Mets, walked off the field, postponing their game with the Marlins. Now, if you're following professional sports, you know that the Major League Baseball teams, the National Basketball Association, Major League Soccer, and the National Hockey League have all postponed games since Wednesday night. The players are doing it as a response to the racial division in our country. And reading comments in many places, I recognize that action is causing reactions on both sides of the issue. Back to last night's game, Mets and Marlins. The Mets take the field. The announcers are telling us what's happening. The announcer tells us that the first batter for the Marlins is approaching the plate, and then there's this 42 seconds of silence. Now, Jackie Robinson Day is usually April 15th. It's the day that Jackie played that first game, and he broke the color barrier. Well, I guess the COVID-19 season has caused many celebrations to be altered. And as the players walked off the field, on home plate was a t-shirt that said, "Black Lives Matter." Scrolling through the comments, they were all over the map, so to speak, supporting and condemning. Today is apparently the day that Major League Baseball teams will celebrate Jackie Robinson Day, other than the 15th, I guess because of transference. But today, August 28th, is also the 57th anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. That was the march led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and a coalition of civil rights leaders. August 28, 1963, is when Dr. King delivers that famous speech standing in front of the Lincoln Memorial, the one we call "I Have a Dream" speech. And I know that many of us know parts of that speech. It gets airtime every year in February as we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And you probably hear these words from Dr. King. "I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering in the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today." I recently read Dr. King's entire speech, and I was deeply moved by his dream. He was only to have spoken for 4 minutes, but like every good preacher, he added more to the speech and the dream. He ran his speech for 16 minutes. Now, I encourage you seriously to find this speech. Go online, Google it. You'll find it in lots of places. And read the dream he has for this country. Read the dream that he offered in 1963. We're still working to fulfill that dream. Here are some of the other lines that jumped out at me, paragraphs actually. Dr. King continued, "In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, They were signing a promissory note which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be granted the, quote, inalienable rights, unquote, of, quote, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, unquote. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. And so we've come to cash this check, a check that will give us, upon demand, the riches of freedom and the security of justice. Unquote from Dr. King. As I said, today marks the 57th anniversary of that speech. It also marks the 57th anniversary of a speech by a young civil rights leader and student named John Lewis. 57 years ago, he came to the attention of the country with his passion for equality, a passion he never lost. Today, I think we are at a crossroads. Yet another shooting, yet another injustice, yet another moment of stomping on the promise of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Today, we're staring at that inequality that still exists. The question of why another black man can be shot 7 times and why a white man can kill 2 and injure another and literally walk away for hours. And I'm sure there are reactions on all sides to those questions. But for me, it's a bigger question. It's a faith question. It's a question of why aren't we able to cash that check that Dr. King brought to the attention of our nation 57 years ago. We've done so much in a half a century. Why can't we fulfill this obligation? I believe we can, and we must. As people who say that God created us all and created us equally, why is it that we're still unable to accept this equality? And I'm sure there will be reactions on both sides of this crossroads. But why? 57 years after a speech that included the phrase victims of police brutality, we're still struggling with that very issue. I pray that we are on the threshold of a change, that we're about to wake from this sleep, wake from Dr. King's dream, and make it a reality. 42 seconds for Jackie Robinson. 8 minutes plus for George Floyd. 57 years for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It means a lifetime of trust and acceptance. Who would have thought that August 28th would have so much impact on me and others? Not just another day, but a day to reflect, a day for change, a day for God's presence, a day to listen. Well, I look forward to seeing you on Sunday, as I always do. And please remember, in the meantime, wash your hands 20 seconds at a time, a couple of times a day. Put on hand lotion to keep them nice and soft. Stay home if you're not feeling well, especially if you have respiratory issues. Please, please, please love one another. I said that pretty sternly, didn't I? I mean it. Love one another. Practice the important physical distancing, 6 feet apart from strangers, but that doesn't mean we ignore them. And get as close as you can to family members. Surround them with hugs and love, because that's what we're about. Please wear your mask when you're outside, when you go to stores. Please protect yourself. Protect me. And of course, Sergeant Esterhaus reminds me every single day, be careful out there.